and welcome back to another solo episode of Legacy Her Way. Hi, I'm Tanya Hendricks, and I'm the host of this podcast. And this is the podcast where we explore how women are creating powerful personal legacies through family, faith, business, community, and beyond. Whether you're a foster mom or you're a founder, you're creative or a caregiver, this podcast goes beyond the buzzwords and we talk about real life, real impact, and the values that guide it all. So, whether you're building wealth, raising kids, or launching your next big thing, this space is for you. And this episode is sponsored by Huntsville Estate Planning Lawyer, where we empower your vision and secure your future through estate planning and trademarks. Let's talk legacy, her way. And today we're talking legacy your way. Through these episodes, through this podcast, you've heard me talk about my legacy. You have heard my guests talk about their legacies and what they're doing to build their legacies and the different aspects of that. And whether that legacy has been building a business, raising children, writing a book to help women, or whatever that may be. You've heard from various guests, maybe it was the legacy of building self-care that you heard from Stephanie just Tuesday. This episode will be broadcast on the Friday following Stephanie's episode. So maybe that's what you last heard, is that legacy of building the importance of self-care and providing for your own self-care and being sure others are taking care of themselves as well. But what is your legacy? Now, before I jump too far into this is not going to be about estate planning, but I will be mentioning some estate planning stuff. I am an estate planning lawyer, so let me just go ahead and get this out of the way, that this is just for educational purposes only. This is not legal advice, and no representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than those performed by other lawyers. So I got that out of the way. Now, let's talk about your legacy. If you listen to, I think it was episode 1, maybe 3, where I talk about legacy, and that I think there are three parts to legacy. One part and one type, well, I'll say not parts, but types. There's types of legacy. So one type is the legacy of your memory. That's your story. That's your life. Then you got the legacy of your resources. Those are your assets. That's your stuff. That's your house. That's your furniture. That's your car. That's your jewelry. That's the legacy of your resources. And then you have the legacy of your identity, who you are. Do you know who you are? Do you have that legacy of your identity? So I'm going to talk about each one of those and each one of those parts, each one of those types of legacies. So let's talk about that, because I want you to start thinking, what is my legacy? What am I doing in my life that I'm building a legacy intentionally? Because you can build a legacy intentionally or not intentionally. I think you will be much happier with a legacy that you leave intentionally, because I've seen the consequences of the unintentional legacies. When you don't do your planning, when you don't do things in a way where you are happy at the end of your life. So what are you doing to build your legacy? And let's first talk about the legacy of your memory, your story. You have experiences in your life that no one else has. You may think that you haven't had anything exciting happen in your life. Nothing has been exceptional, extraordinary, so you don't really have anything to pass on, but you do. Think through some of the things you have done, you have learned. Maybe you had a terrible heartbreak. Maybe you were cheated on. Maybe you were deceived. You may have had a terrible situation where you were a victim of a sexual assault. Maybe you were you were class Victorian or valedictorian. You're a valedictorian or salutatorian, or you just barely passed, or you made it through school without any absences. If you can make it through school without absences, kudos to you. But you have a story to tell. You have a life and you have some situations in which you learned something. We've all been through some sort of mess. We've all been through some sort of trial. And those messes and those trials that we have made it through, we can take that and teach others about that. And maybe it's just teaching your own children. Maybe when you were a teenager, you had a terrible heartbreak. And then now you have a teenage daughter who's going through a terrible heartbreak, and you can share your story with her and how you pushed through and how you made it through and how it's not the end of the world and how there's more people out there, but it's your story that you can tell and pass down. I was fortunate that my dad, who passed away in 2006, did a lot of writing. He did a lot of poetry, and so we have those poems that he wrote. But I also had him. I got him a book because he liked writing, and so I got him a book where he answered a lot of questions about his life story. And so I got to learn more about him through that. And now that he is gone, we have those things to look back on. He also preached, and there are some recordings of those preachings, and it's nice to go back and hear his voice. You know, as I said, he passed away in 2006, so it's been a number of years now, and to be able to hear that voice again is just amazing. If you have lost someone and you have the ability, someone close to you that you love, and you have the ability to hear that voice again, I mean, it's indescribable. I mean, it really is just indescribable to hear that voice again. I would encourage you, and really it's something I want to be able to do with my mom. I want to have something from her like that, whether it's through recordings, whether it's through writings, but something that when she's gone, I have that. I can hear her voice again. I can hear her stories again. So for those of you who are listening to this, I would encourage you to just start recording yourself talking, telling stories. Maybe you tell a story, maybe just pull up your phone, record a story of when you were growing up. Record something funny that happened to you as a child. Write it down. If you like to write, just get a journal. You can get a little book. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just a little notebook, spiral bound notebook, whatever it may be, and just start writing some things. Just like think about what's a lesson you learned from your parents? What's a lesson you learned from your grandparents? What is something that maybe your fondest memory as a child, or not fondest memory, and you learned a lesson? So that's the legacy of your memory, of your story, that you're able to pass those things down to your children, because it's just so incredible for your children to have those things and to learn those things from you. If you don't teach them, somebody else will. And also, some of you have a tremendous amount of experience, a tremendous amount of knowledge. Don't die with that still in your head. Unless you get it out of your head on paper, on video, all of that hard-earned wisdom, hard-earned knowledge will go to waste. It'll die with you. Don't do that to your family. Don't do that to humanity. Maybe you have come up with some incredible, I'm here in Huntsville in the Rocket City. Maybe you've come up with some incredible formulas or some engineering feats, and maybe you haven't patented it or you haven't done something with it. It's in your head. Maybe you learned some lessons along the way. Write it out. Get it out so that your story is preserved, so that you can help the next generation. We haven't gone through our lives for nothing. So whether you've had something major happen to you or nothing major's ever happened to you, just, you grew up, went to school, maybe got married, you have had experiences that you can pass on. So don't waste those experiences. Use those experiences to teach someone. And it can be through writing, it can be through recordings, but share your wisdom and your knowledge, your story with the next generation. And then there's the legacy of your resources. That's your stuff. And that's where a lot of people think about. Oh, let me back up. I'm going to go back to something on the memory part. If you choose to write, I mean, maybe you have a desire to be an author. A lot of people want to write a book, they just don't know what to write about. Maybe that's what you write about. Maybe just write about having grown up in Madison County, Alabama, or grown up in rural Alabama, or grown up in the city or something. You can write those things. You can share those stories, and you can make it a legacy book where it's only for your family. Only your family sees it. That's a possibility. So you can do that as well. And you can publish it or not. Something that I have done, and I call this my book is my business card. So I have this little short, small book. It's less than like 5,000 words. I mean, it's short. So it's like 5,000 words. And it's something that I give out when I meet new people, especially like at networking events. But this is my business card. This tells people who I am, why I do what I do. You can do the same thing if you're a business owner. You can do your book as your business card and give this out to people so they can learn a little bit more about you. So you can share your story with your business through a little book like this. This doesn't take much, but you can certainly do that to share your wisdom and share your story. And so then the legacy of your resources. What are you passing down? Um, as an estate planning lawyer, I get questioned a lot about, well, I don't have anything. I don't have any money. I don't have anything. So why am I don't have any reason to do an estate plan. So an estate plan is more than your stuff and who gets it at your death. An estate plan includes things like a power of attorney for someone to act on your behalf if you're stuck in the hospital for a long period of time. And things happen. I mean, things happen all the time. If you're in the Huntsville area listening to this, you heard the news that on yesterday, July 30th, a truck didn't have brakes coming down the Ledges Hill. And if you're not in Huntsville, you're not familiar with the Ledges Hill, it's a steep hill that you come down. Even in my little car, I pick up a lot of speed coming down that hill, so I can't imagine this big truck. And it barrels down, doesn't have brakes, and goes across the street through a parking lot, and it's through a busy intersection. Thank goodness there were no cars crossing at that time. I mean, that would have been horrible. So it crosses this intersection and then barrels through a parking lot and then hits the target. Weird things happen, strange things happen all the time. No one who was at Target yesterday around that time was expecting to see that happen. Thankfully, no visitors were injured. Nobody at the store was injured. Nobody in the parking lot was injured. It just was fate that the place where the truck came through in the parking lot was fairly empty. But how many of us have parked in that spot, in that road before? How many of us have walked into that store at that location before? And we were thinking last night, man, what if we'd been there? It's a horrible thing that happened. Thankfully, no one died. Just kind of wrap up that little story. No one died. There are some injuries to the driver and passenger, but thankfully they survived. But imagine having been there and seen that, or actually been hit by that truck coming through. You never know when something's going to happen. It wasn't on your calendar to go to Target at that particular time and get hit by a truck. So things happen, and so you want to plan. Even if you're 19, 20, 21, and you don't have a house yet, you don't have children, you likely have a bank account. What's going to happen to that bank account? I have had people have to pay me $1,500 to get access to $2,000 in a bank account. So don't do that to your family. When it comes to your resources, when it comes to your stuff, have a plan. Don't leave it to chance. Don't leave it to the state. So if you don't have your will or trust or a power of attorney in place, the state of Alabama has one for you. The state says where things go if you don't make your own plan. If you got minor children and you don't have an estate plan in place, a judge is going to make the decision about where your children go without any input from you. If you're in a situation where someone has to be appointed guardian of your children, you're either deceased or you're incapacitated. So you're not going to be in a position to say what your wishes are. You do that now. You have to do that now while you're alive, while you're competent, to make a plan for your children, to do what's best for them. Because you know what's best for them. A judge doesn't. A judge can hear evidence, but he or she will just make the best decision they can. You know what's best for your children. And so you can make that plan now and avoid a messy custody battle if something happened to both parents of these children. So your resources, the legacy of your resources is important. I have seen legacies ruined. I'll not say ruined, but tarnished because someone passed away without making a plan. And the decedent, the person that died, who everyone in the family, spouse, children, looked up to, they revered, they thought he had everything together. They come back after he died like he did no planning. He's left us this huge mess. We don't know what to do. We don't even know where to start. Mom doesn't have access to money because he was the only person on the checking account. How do we pay the bills? What do we do with this? Because someone didn't plan. And it's so stinking easy to make a plan. So don't go through life without creating a legacy for your resources. Because creating a legacy for your resources is creating a legacy for your family and for you. It's a way to protect your family in the future so that they don't have to come to me or some other probate lawyer and say, we don't know where to even begin. We need access to money. We can't pay the bills, but it was only in that person's name. Or this is not the person I thought he was. I can't believe he didn't have all this stuff together. I can't believe he left me with this mess. So get your legacy with your resources together. And also with that, if you have a business, your legacy for your resources, that type of legacy can also include ensuring you have a business succession plan so that if you pass away, if you have a business partner, your business partner is not having to deal with your spouse or children who know nothing about your business, but because they're the spouse or the children, they could be appointed as the representatives of the estate and be the one that you as the business partner have to deal with. You need to have a business succession plan. Even if you don't have a partner, what happens to your business if something happens to you? I know a lot of solopreneurs. They have no idea if something happened to them, if they were suddenly incapacitated, stuck in a hospital, or they died. Who's going to keep up the contracts? Who's going to collect the money from the people that owe them money? There are a lot of questions that are unanswered when you don't have a plan in place. So plan your legacy for your resources. And finally, I want to talk about the legacy of you, your identity, who you are. How do you identify? And I'm not talking about some of the stuff that's been in the news the last several years. I'm talking about who are you? I identify as a child of God. That's where my identity is rooted. My identity is rooted in the foundation that I'm a child of God. So I'm God's little girl. I'm a wife. I have a wonderful husband. That's part of my identity. I'm a stepmom. That's part of my identity. And then I'm an attorney. And now and the other part, and not just being an attorney, but one of the things that I really identify with is someone who supports other women. I want to support other women, which is part of the reason this podcast is to support women. Whether it's you as the listener, that you're maybe getting some inspiration, getting some encouragement, getting some ideas. get that motivation to do something, or it's the women who are coming on the podcast and sharing their stories and sharing about their businesses and maybe boosting their businesses from that. I really encourage you to, as you hear these, excuse me, as you hear these podcasts, patronize these businesses, support these women. We want to support women on this podcast. That's one of the things here. But that's part of my story, and part of my identity is being supportive of women. There's so much that goes into that, and so much that goes into how you identify and where your identity is rooted. And you may not be able to answer that right away. It may take you some deep thinking. It may take you some time alone, may take you some time journaling, figuring out who you are, where your identity is. It may be that you're a mom. I have a friend who years ago, we were coworkers, we're colleagues at the same law firm, and she called me in a panic because she was going to have to be somewhere, and it was going to conflict with baking her daughter's birthday cake. And I was very flippant about it. I was like, I didn't think her daughter was going to be 7 or 8 that year. And I said, look, you've done it every year. Missing it 1 year is not going to hurt. So I was very flippant about that. But she stuck to her guns and she said, no, it's my daughter's birthday. I'm her mom. I'm going to bake the cake. I've always done that. And she did. And to her credit, I look back now, this was probably 10 years ago, more than that, probably 15 years ago. I look back and that was the best decision for her to make, because now her daughter has that legacy. That daughter now understands how much her mother loves her, because for other reasons too, but every single year her mother baked her cake. She's now an adult out of college and her mother still bakes her cakes. That's just her thing. And that's something that her daughter will always remember about her. That's something that her daughter will always cherish about her. Like, my mom made me a priority. So her identity is as a mom. She has other things too, but she's deeply rooted in being this daughter's mother. And that may be where your identity is. It may be that, I'm a lawyer and that's where my identity is and everything else is secondary. I think you can have your identity be rooted in multiple things. I mentioned multiple things for me. But as you are thinking through this idea of legacy, whether it's the legacy of your story, your resources, or your identity, there are some things I want you to think about. How are you impacting the next generation or the people around you? Are you being intentional with what you're doing? Are you being intentional with building your legacy? I've been surprised at the number of times I've had people tell me that they admire me or look up to me. I never set out to be a role model. I just set out to help women and be impactful and have a future. And I've had people say, I want my daughters to grow up to be like you. And I'm like, what? That's the furthest from what I would want. But they see me striving. They see me out there doing things and not being afraid to do things. And that's what they want their daughters to emulate. And I wasn't doing intentionally. And so you have people in your life who are looking at you. You may not be intentional about being a role model. You're just going about your life, being you. But there are people watching you. They're watching every move you make, everything you say, because they want to be like you. You're in a place, you may not like where you're at. You may be moaning and groaning and complaining about being wherever you're at, but you're in a place that someone else would love to be in. And they're watching you. And they're looking at you for guidance. When I was in college, back in the early 90s, well, actually mid-90s, I volunteered with Child Abuse Prevention Services of Tuscaloosa. And one of the things I did with them was I worked with, it was like a Thursday night. They had a group class for parents who were at risk. So the parents would be in a class and the children would be doing their own thing. So similar type um, topics for the night, but obviously very different activities. I was playing with kids while the parents were in class going through things. And one night, every night after we had the parents and kids left, the volunteers would all come together and we just kind of debrief for the night. There was one night that we debriefed, and the topic for the parents was amazing. And I remember when the facilitator told us the question that she had asked and then the response from the parents, I was like, wow. So I'm going to ask you the question that this facilitator asked the parents in this group, because this falls into your legacy. What are you leaving to your children? What are you leaving to those around you? So the question to the parents was this. She asked the parents, how do you act when you get mad? When you get angry about something, how do you act? And the parents were spouting off answers. I yell, I cuss, I scream, slam doors, all those things. So I'm asking you, how do you act when you get angry and mad? Think about that for a second. How do you respond? Now, the follow-up question is, if you have children, how do they act when they get angry? And they get aggravated with you, or they frustrated? Do they yell? Do they cuss, scream, slam doors? Is it the same way that you respond when you get angry? Which for those parents, they had the light bulb moment when they realized that their actions, that their children were mimicking their actions. So it's not just the words that we say, it's the way we act as well. It's what we're doing. So for those parents, they realize that they are setting the example for their children. They can tell their children all day long, don't slam doors. But if the parent is the one slamming the doors, the kids are going to slam doors too, because that's what they're seeing. That's what they're learning. They are learning that behavior. And that is the legacy. That is part of a legacy that's being left. You're teaching your children behaviors by how you act. And so I would encourage you as you are thinking through your legacy, and I hope this podcast episode has encouraged you to start thinking about your legacy, to start thinking about what am I doing that the next generation may learn from? What am I doing to benefit the next generation? What am I doing that is detrimental to the next generation? If you're engaged in activities, whether it's slamming doors, yelling, screaming, cussing, whatever that may be, that the next generation is watching, maybe that's the behavior you've got to change. Because you can change your legacy. It's a great thing about legacy and being intentional. If you're going down a wrong path, you can always stop and change. It may not be easy. It may be hard. But if you work at it and keep at it, don't quit, you can change that legacy. And you can leave the legacy you want to leave for your children, for your nieces, for your nephews, for your sisters, friends of kids. So I have nieces and I have friends of kids who I know look to me. And it's humbling. It's scary. But I want to do the best I can to be a good example and to leave a legacy that people know that I cared. At the end of the day, I can be a great lawyer, but if I don't care about people, it makes no difference. Paul writes in, I think it's 1 Corinthians, that you can have all these gifts. You can be this exceptional person, extremely intelligent, have all the things, but if you don't have love, you have nothing. Being intentional about your legacy it's an act of love. Having your estate plan in place is an act of love. Making sure that you are sharing your stories, making sure you're sharing your insight, your wisdom, is an act of love. Maybe it's an act of love to your family, or it's an act of love to the community, the country, the world. Maybe you need to write a book and share your story so that your story can impact someone in another part of the country who you may not ever actually meet in person, but she could read your story and it could resonate with her and she can learn lessons from you. She can be inspired by you and she can know that because you made it through, so can she. So, what is your legacy? Thank you for listening to Legacy Her Way. If today's conversation inspired you, moved you, or made you think differently about what legacy means, you're likely very likely not alone. So be sure to follow the show to never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, please leave a review because a review helps other people find the podcast. And I'd really want, if you're getting value out of this podcast, don't you want to share it with others? Don't you want others to also get value out of it? So don't keep it to yourself. Share it and leave a review. So until next time, keep building boldly, loving deeply, and building and living your legacy. Have a great day.